Good evening. How are you? I'm delighted tonight to welcome everybody to our annual Fall Public Service Awards dinner and to the 10th anniversary celebration of the John and Terry Levin Center for Public Service and Public Interest Law. I must, of course, begin by welcoming John and Terry and their family and their special guests to this wonderful celebration. 10 years goes by pretty quickly, doesn't it? So happy anniversary. I also wanted to take just a second to acknowledge that this is a really hard time for many in our law school community, those who have family and friends who've been impacted by floods and storms and fire and wind. And others in our broader communities who are facing grave challenges right now due to changes in policies that are impacting their lives and their livelihoods. And to many, of course, in our global community who are also facing incredibly challenging times and who are standing up to various aspects of adversity that they are facing. In face of these hardships, I think, as many of you said to me this afternoon at our reception, it's really important for us to come together as a community to acknowledge the power of the law to advance the public good during these kinds of times, and to just really support each other as a community that's dedicated to public service and to using law to advance social justice. As I thought about the passage of this decade, for some reason I couldn't help but just thinking about all of the offices that Anna Wang and I have occupied in the Crown Building. We have traversed every floor of the Crown Building, and I think maybe just telling you a little bit of the history of our offices will tell you a little bit about the history. Selena Copeland is nodding. She was here from the beginning. We'll just tell you a little bit about kind of the history of the growth of the center, of which I think we're all very proud. So many of you don't know this specific history. I hired Anna Wang as a temp into a coordinator position. I guess I knew talent when I saw it, but little did I know how much talent there was in this amazing woman who quickly made herself completely irreplaceable, who showed an acuity and a deep and empathetic compassion to working with students that I think is just incredible and inspires me every day. But so Anna and I started together after I hired her as a temp coordinator to run something that I think at the time oddly was called the Public Policy and Public Interest Program at Stanford Law School. And we were in these little offices adjacent to the Office of Career Services on the first floor, and those were where we kind of started, the origin story, shall we say. And then somehow something happened, and we were told that no, we were now going to run something called just the Public Interest Program. Public policy was taken away from us, which was fine. And then we were supposed to move downstairs. So we were moved to, I think it's called the garden level, but really it's the basement, let's face it. But we were very pleased in many ways because we then were placed adjacent to the clinical program, which was then actually downstairs on the garden level. And we shared then, as we share now, many, many students. So it was a happy place for us to be there. And then there were another set of changes, and legal research and writing folks, which is where we were located on that hallway, and all of you know that space. And things changed again. But it was downstairs, actually, that we were told that we could hire at least a part-time, if not full-time, pro bono coordinator. So that was good news, and so we grew there. And then we were bumped up to the second floor. Again, I'm not sure why. I think it was to make room for the Gray Fellows and the Legal Research and Writing faculty, but who knows. And it was there on the second floor that really the center, the Levin Center, was really formally launched. And we were there able to hire Titi Liu, who sends her regrets and her regards, who couldn't be here, as a full-time person who would work with us to really support our students interested in public international law, and to develop a whole set of programs that I know that all of you are familiar with now. It was from there, after a torturous, really torturous year, I think, of construction, from there that we were able to move up to the 3rd floor. And it was on the 3rd floor where we briefly, as center, not law school colleagues, were able to have an amazing work experience with colleagues Holly Parrish and Jory Steele before Liz took them away to head up our student affairs. Thankfully, they're amazing colleagues. And then we were gifted by Mike Wynn and Jody Carrion joining our center. And I have to say, I'm not sure how we have been so fortunate that every iteration of the John and Terry Levin Center for Public Service and Public Interest Law just gets better. It's an amazing, amazing history of the center, but it really is just a gift to me to be able to work with these folks every day. And so I want to take just this moment to thank Anna and Mike and Jody and TT and Abstentia for the inspiration that you provide to me every day and that I know you provide to this entire law school community. I think as a team we work really well together because we always bring out the best in each other. So I would love to acknowledge the staff. I also really know that everything that happens here is only because of the amazing leadership that we have from Liz McGill. And so I would really love to just acknowledge Liz McGill for her support and everything she does to really support and nurture the public service community here at the law school. I would also love us to acknowledge our Munger catering staff here who every year help us put on this amazing event with attention to detail and just a kindness about this event. So thank you very much. And so the roadmap for this evening, it's in your program, but just so you know how things will flow, momentarily I will be honored to introduce Sharon Turman, and she will come up. And in turn, she will make brief remarks and introduce our Reuben awardee this year, Tamika Butler. And I'm just going to take a little bit of a tangent to say, so honored that you are back at this law school, Tamika. I'm so proud of you. Tamika Butler was an inspiration the entire time she was at this law school. She taught everyone here every day just by being the amazing kind of leader, student leader that she was. And I know some of you had the opportunity to have lunch with Tamika or to take advantage of office hours. One student said after that, we just need more Tamikas in the world. And I would agree to that. Tamika is just one of the most honest people that I have ever met. Honest with herself, which I think is incredibly important, but also just honest in every moment of her life. And it's a rare, rare skill and talent. So congratulations, my friend. Now I'm going to ask Sharon Turman to come up shortly. For faculty and staff, you may remember that Sharon Turman was our 2011 Reuben awardee, a co-honoree with Vernon Jordan, as he said. And Sharon is a 2004 graduate of the law school. So I was able to get to know Sharon very well toward the end of her time at the law school and toward the beginning of mine. After graduating from Stanford, Sharon clerked and then joined what was then called Legal Aid Society Employment Law Center and is now called Legal Aid at Work. And we have a whole slew of Legal Aid at Work folks here that I would like to thank for being here with us. And Sharon joined them as a Skadden Fellow. She now directs their Family and Workers' Rights Project and is really just nationally known as an advocate for workers' rights in the country. So I would love to invite Sharon to come up.
Thank you, Diane. I am honored to present the 2017 Miles L. Rubin Public Interest Award to my friend Tamika Butler. The Rubin Award recognizes an alum whose outstanding work has advanced justice and social change in the lives of vulnerable populations on a community, national, or international level. The award is intended to highlight concrete and sustainable approaches and solutions to a societal problem. That is a perfect description of Tamika Butler, who has devoted her entire career to advancing justice for low-income communities, people of color, women, and LGBTQ individuals. I first met Tamika here at Stanford in the fall of 2006 when she was a 1L and I was a recent alum coming back to do mock interviews with first-year public interest students. From our very first meeting, I was struck by Tamika's warmth and her openness and her sense of self. I could see then what I know now. Tamika is the real deal. Tamika interned with Legal Aid at Work during law school, and after graduation, she joined us as a Skadden Fellow, and she launched an employment rights clinic serving the Bay Area's African American community. Following her fellowship, she became Legal Aid at Work's first John and Terry Levin Fair Play for Girls in Sports Fellow. It's a handful. She had a long business card. And in that capacity, she fought for equal opportunity for girls in athletics. In that position is now held by Kim Turner. One of Tamika's most remarkable qualities is her ability to listen and make people feel heard. At Legal Aid, Tamika and I worked together representing a woman who had been fired from her job after she disclosed that she had breast cancer and would need time off for treatment. Our client was understandably traumatized by this experience. The stress of litigation was aggravating her anxiety, and I was growing worried that our client would not be able to continue with her case. I was completely blown away by how Tamika, then a brand new lawyer, magically turned everything around. She listened to the client's concerns, she gained her trust, and she brought the case to a successful resolution, restoring our client to her job, obtaining money damages, and securing injunctive relief to make sure nothing like this would ever happen again. Tamika's impact was not limited to her clients. She also made our organization stronger. With her wise insights, her strategic thinking, her unique ability to truly connect with people. She also raised our game in terms of fashion. Legal aid lawyers, it's not our best, with the exception of my colleagues who are here tonight, of course. But she really upped our average. And she brought great snacks to meetings. Ruffles were her snack of choice. Joan Graff, executive director, who's here with us tonight, had this to say about Tamika. When I first met Tamika, I knew she was headed for a rich, diverse, and rewarding career. Her talents and energy, people skills, and political acumen were notable, and her vision of equality was expansive. We who have worked with Tamika know that wherever she may be, she will move mountains to secure justice. After Legal Aid at Work, Tamika transitioned to policy work and became the California Director of Young Invincibles, where she focused on healthcare, higher education, and economic security for young people. For the past 3 years, Tamika served as Executive Director of the Los Angeles Bicycle Coalition, where she led policy advocacy, education, and community building work to make the streets of LA more bike-friendly. And as she does in everything that she does, she brought her intersectional social justice lens to this work. Her current role is Executive Director of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, a nonprofit that addresses social and racial equity and wellness by building parks and gardens in park-poor communities in greater LA. Even beyond her day job, Tamika has generously given her time to causes she cares about. She was the youngest co-chair of the board of directors of the National Center for Lesbian Rights. She serves as an advisory board member for the Legal Aid at Work's Fair Play for Girls in Sports project, and she holds several other board positions. It is no surprise that Tamika has left every institution she has touched better off. She left her mark on this institution too. At Stanford, Tamika served as president of the Stanford Law Association, president of the Stanford Public Interest Law Foundation, and president of Outlaw. She also was active in the Black Law Students Association and served as the lead coordinator for the Domestic Violence Pro Bono Project. Former Dean Larry Kramer had this to say about her. Tamika stood out from the moment she arrived. She was the rare student who managed simultaneously to be able to challenge all the things that needed to be challenged and to be entirely constructive in the way she did so. Her views were quirky and original and persuasive. She really was the model of an activist student, incorruptible, with a ton of integrity, but someone who would listen and to whom one could speak. I learned from her a lot. Tamika is a natural leader. She's a master storyteller. She is fearless. She's thoughtful, creative, genuine, and kind. She understands intuitively how to communicate with and motivate people. She inspires everyone around her, all the while making us laugh and making us think. I'm so proud to call Tamika my friend, and I'm honored to present her with the Miles L. Rubin Public Interest Award. Congratulations.
I'm reluctant to say anything because I was so good. I don't want to mess it up. The last person to talk that nicely about me was Diane, and then before that, my mother only. So thank you, Sharon. Sharon is a huge part of the reason I'm here. I remember seeing her win this award and thinking, I could never do that. Seeing public interest superstars like Selena, like folks in front of us, and just being like, they do a lot of work for other people. That takes a lot of time. They must be tired. I can't ever be up there. And it was also a lot less fancy then. Stanford Law has really come up. Wow. So thank you, Sharon. It was, I remember signing up for my 1L mock interview. I had mono my first year. There was me and one other student who had really bad mono and were out for most of the year. And I remember dragging myself out of bed and saying, well, I gotta do this mock interview because I have to find a job. And I knew I wasn't gonna do public interest law. My dad had been laid off my first year of law school. And as a Stanford law student, I had the highest earning potential of anyone in my family. And so I knew I had to work at a law firm, but I thought I should meet Sharon. This employment law thing sounds interesting. I had conversations with my father about why he was laid off, and he talked about being old and being black, and about facing discrimination and not knowing what to do. And I remember feeling so hopeless that I was at Stanford Law School. In my opinion, the best law school in the country that year, according to U.S. News and Reports, the second best law school in the country. And he didn't say anything to me. And so I remember when I saw Employment Law Center, I thought, I'm gonna go meet this Sharon lady. And she's telling the story about how warm I was, but anybody who spent 5 minutes with Sharon, and probably even just seeing her up here, realizes how warm she is. And how much she draws you in. And even though I couldn't work at the Employment Law Center over the summer, she stayed in touch. Our other colleague and friend, Elizabeth Kristen, who made a mistake and went to Berkeley School of Law, but we still liked her anyway. She came and spoke to our employment law class, and they stayed in touch, and they never gave up on me working at the Employment Law Center. And so I was really lucky when I got to during my 3L year, which was a trek getting to the city on Caltrain. I was the ED of the Bike Coalition before my current job, and I was just telling my wife, in my years at Stanford, I never rode a bike. I actually had a skateboard because I was very cool. And so I would skateboard to Caltrain and then skateboard from Caltrain in the city to the Employment Law Center. And it was just such a community where I can be and feel myself. And so I first want to thank all of my colleagues who are here from the Employment Law Center and all of my colleagues who couldn't be here. And I know you're legal aid at work now, but that's really hard for me to say. And so I just want to say thank you for helping me become not just the lawyer that I am, but the leader that I am. And I couldn't have done it without all of you, but in particular, Elizabeth and Sharon have meant so much to me that I have to stop talking about it or I'll cry, but thank you. Diane told me I had 15 minutes. And I don't want to take 15 minutes, but when I thought about what I wanted to share today, I had this whole idea. And then I did a lunch talk with a few students, and they said, just say the same thing. There are a lot of cuss words in that lunch talk, mainly because that's just how I talk. But I did want to share a little bit about what the Levin Center meant to me when I came to Stanford, what it meant to me while I was here, and what it's meant to me now that I'm no longer at Stanford Law School. And so I'm from Nebraska. I'm from the Midwest. Are you from Nebraska? It's the same thing to all these people. Like, they don't know. They don't have a clue. And so I came from the Midwest, and I remember Admitted Students Weekend. First of all, I went to Berkeley first, and I was like, this is where I'm going to school. Like, this place is awesome. There's so many people of color. There's so many queer women. Clearly, I'm in law school to meet a wife. Like, this is gonna go really well. And then most of my weekend at Berkeley, it was raining, it was gray, it was horrible. And then it was time to go to Stanford. And again, I'm from Nebraska. Everything's spread apart, so you're used to things being spread apart. And someone overheard me saying I was gonna take a bus from Berkeley to Palo Alto and be there like within an hour. And they laughed at me and took pity on me and offered me a ride. And that student was Yada, and she ended up coming to Stanford as well and being another public interest superstar. And we came here, and I just remember, like, you drive up and there's palm trees and the sun like broke through. There's probably like a rainbow and like a bald eagle. And it was insane. And I remember going to Faye's office, sitting down in her office and being like, you don't know who I am. And she's like, I know who you are. I do admissions. And I'm like, you don't know who I am, but I'm from Nebraska? She's like, I know. I know a lot of people who go to Creighton, where you went to school. And I'm like, right, whatever. I don't belong here. I think you made a mistake. And I was very serious because I just looked around and I just didn't feel like I fit in, and I thought there must have been some mistake. And I remember thinking, you know, what happened? How did I end up here? And I went through the rest of that weekend and still feeling uncertain, still feeling like there was just something about Berkeley that seemed like it fit more. Not the financial aid, that definitely was better here. Also not the utensils. They use plastic utensils at Berkeley, and like everything I came to here had real utensils, and lots of salad. And I thought, you know, I don't know if this can be the place for me. I was only in law school because I came from a family. I have an older sister who tells these stories about how lucky I am that I didn't know what it was like to be on welfare, that I didn't know what it was like to eat government cheese. I have a dad who has 14 brothers and sisters who grew up in the projects of Omaha, Nebraska, which for cities of its size is one of the most dangerous cities for African Americans to live in, with one of the highest death rates. He just told me this past year when my wife and I were home about all the crazy things he did to make money. and they said you have to be a lawyer or a doctor. Because I think for so many parents who haven't had the same opportunities, if they see that you have a chance, particularly for low-income kids, kids of color, they want you to have a career, and being a doctor and being a lawyer are concrete careers. And I remember just looking at my options and being like, well, shit, med school is really long, and there's a lot of blood. And if the whole point of being a lawyer is to go to court, but if you do it right, you never go to court, and it's 3 years, this seems like a good idea. And so I was here not because I thought I wanted to be here. I wanted to help people. I wanted to do the right thing, and this seemed like a way to do it. And there was so much happening at Admitted Students Weekend that I didn't know if I saw a way for me to do good in the world. And then there was a panel that Diane was on, and I stayed after nervously to talk to her, and she probably doesn't even remember this conversation. It felt like it was an hour long. I'm sure it was 2 minutes because she's very busy. And she told me a lot of things, but mainly said, if no one comes here who wants to do this work, who wants to make a change, then how are we ever going to be that school? And it really stuck with me, and it was the reason I came to Stanford and financial aid. And when I remember getting here in the fall and being struck, Dean Kramer, who's my favorite dean only because he's the only dean I knew, but I hear you're amazing. Dean Kramer says I stuck out, but mainly because I have over 100 Yankees ball caps. I'm a huge Yankees fan. And I wore a Yankees hat. Professor Brody knows I wore a Yankees hat every day. I was like early 2000 lesbian, lots of plaid shorts. And then I mentioned the skateboard. And so I really did stick out. And the other part that was hard, in addition to being isolated because I had mono, I was the only queer woman in my class. And I've been keeping track. Lisa, who's come out? Like, I don't know that anyone's come out. I tried. I mean, it never happened. And so we went through law school. I was the only queer woman in our class. There weren't a lot of black students, and our professors were great. I still remember Professor Banks explaining to me what Trader Joe's was and like blowing my mind. And we were supported. And I remember one of our classmates who was supposed to be here tonight and was sick and couldn't come. I remember meeting her the first day of school and her saying, oh my gosh, have you heard of Professor Jenny Martinez? Have you heard of Professor Deborah Rohde? And then like knew your bios. And I was like, what is happening? I thought we were just supposed to get our books. And like everyone like knew these super impressive professors we had, and I was like, I just want to know what Trader Joe's is, because we don't have those in the Midwest. And I remember just constantly feeling like I was trying to play catch up. I learned what NPR was at Stanford Law School. I learned to enjoy it, except during the membership drive. I learned, frankly, how to be around folks who had more means than me. I learned how to be around really nice, well-meaning white people who often said problematic things. It really prepared me for so much. And I think, the thing that really kept me anchored wasn't necessarily the professors with the fancy bios. It was Anna and Diane. It was the Levin Center. That was the place where I met Sharon. That was the place where when I was having a really hard time, I can go. Shadell, who was, broadly in student services, was really helpful. Those were folks who would let us go in their offices and we could say, yo, like we talked about affirmative action today, and this white boy said that I just think I'm special because I'm black, and I am special, but I'm also smart. and they would talk to us, and they would calm us down, and they would tell us everything would be okay. And so I know when John and Terry started the center, there were probably many thoughts they had about what it could be. But for so many of us, it was just a home. It was just a place we can go. And I think for most of the students of color in my class, even the ones who were always going to law firms, were never going to do anything differently except for give me money when I asked for it. They knew who Diane and Anna were too. And they knew that if they needed something, there were two women there who could help. Jennifer was there at the time, and it was just this community, this place where we didn't have to feel so different, where we didn't have to feel like we were standing out, and where we felt like we belonged, even if we didn't know what NPR was. Now, I think it was, this place also where we were pushed to be our best selves, where we were pushed not to think we were less than we actually were, and where we were pushed to get jobs, and to continue giving back. And I think that's probably what brought Sharon back to do her mock interview. That's what keeps bringing me back, that we really have a loyalty to the staff and all the incredible work that they do. Now, in my first year, Diane also decided she was going to Berkeley. And I will watch my language, but I was like, this lady convinced me to come here. If no one comes, what will we be? And then she went to the school I turned down. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm going to talk to Anna. We're going to get a plan together. We're going to go to Berkeley, and we're about to roll. Like, I was there. I was ready. But Diane had to do what she had to do, and we made it. We made it a little bit of time without her, but we missed her. Anna really carried the load for so many of us who still needed her, who still needed to know that everything was okay. But I'm glad Diane is back where she's supposed to be. Pay her whatever she wants. Don't let her leave. But I think that's a good summary of what the Levin Center means for so many of us while we're here. When I left the Levin Center, they continued to be helpful, because anytime I had questions at work, anytime I didn't know what was going on, and most importantly, when I failed the bar, they were the folks I went to. I was so devastated. I thought my life was over. I started thinking, I didn't even want to come to law school. And now I got to take a test to prove that I want to do this thing I don't even know if I want to do, even though I had really wanted to do it. And they supported me. They knew I could do it. They pushed me not to give up. And after I did pass the bar on my second attempt, praise the Lord, everything I do is to make my mother proud. And I was just like, I can't tell her I failed the bar again. And it would have been okay. She would have loved me. But I know I got through it because of the support I had from this center. And at every turn, I am a military kid, so I need to change things like every 3 years. So I literally, a few of the students earlier were like, your bio, you've done so much. And I'm like, yeah, I just like to move a lot, right? And so every 3 years when it's time to move, I reach out to Diane, and I'm like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? I'm curious about doing this. What do you think I should do about this? And that's what I've always really appreciated about the John and Terry Levin Center, that it's not just a service when you're there. It's a service that continues even after you leave. These folks are available to us day and night. Even when we don't respond to their emails, they had to ask me a few times about my eating preferences and when I was coming. They respond to our emails, and they answer all of our questions. And they continue to uplift us and make us know that we're not less than, that we're not unimportant, that we belong. And I think it's easy to leave Stanford and say, well, that was this great snapshot in my life. That's not really who I am. That's not really where I belong. Or somehow to lose who you are and become something that you're not. And I feel like they really keep us centered. And they really keep us centered by continuing to engage with us. Now, I still have a little bit of my imposter syndrome that I think so many women and so many people of color had. So definitely, I got the email that I got this honor, and I was like, this is a mistake. I need to call Faye. Tell her they made a mistake again. I was like, oh, it's the 10th anniversary. I get it. When I was at the Employment Law Center, I had the John and Terry Levin Sports Fellowship. So this is like a double doozy for John and Terry. I can do that. I mean, really, they paid for all my legal successes, so I owe them something. I mean, John, we have the same award. You gave more money, so I don't know who's winning here. But you obviously helped me. And I remember thinking, like, why did this happen? Why did this happen? And it was, again, these awesome individuals saying, take a step back. Like, look at all that you've done. Look at all that you've accomplished. Look all that you're going to continue to do. This is about you, and you just have to own that. And one of the things they really try to teach us is how to say thank you, which is really tough. Because I think sometimes we're so busy out there trying to change the world that we never stop and reflect about what we're actually doing. And because we're Stanford students, Stanford alum, we're high achievers, and all we think about is if we're accomplishing perfection. And we don't do a good job just taking stock of all the progress we're making. And so for me, that's been part of what the Levin Center has did since I've gone. They've really reminded me that even when things are going perfectly, when the world is fucking on fire like it is now, to still pause and say, but you're doing good work. You're staying true to yourself, and you're still trying to help. And so that's been really crucial for me. I think what I want to end with is just making sure that when folks leave this space, that they continue to give back. I think John and Terry are such amazing examples of what caring and giving a little, or a lot, if you have it, can mean for impacting change in lives. And I know they've made a direct impact in my life. They've made a direct impact in my ability to practice law, to have a career where I don't make the most money, but where I am fulfilled by all that they've given. And in given to me, they have given to my clients, they have given to my other colleagues, they have given to communities that I care about. And I think, especially during this time, we all are really struggling. We're struggling because we're experiencing something that some of us have never experienced before. As people of color, we're struggling because we're wondering what took white people so long to figure out that racism was a thing, and that it really existed, and that it even existed here at Stanford, right? And I was sharing with the students earlier how many times I got asked what sport I played. The time that Jillian, our director of facilities, had to get somebody to take their hands off of me as they tried to kick me off the law school campus because they thought I was gang affiliated because I was wearing sorority colors with Greek letters on them. Greek letters I knew how to read because I was in the sorority, right? And the time that I was driving my friends back from bar review and I was pulled over by campus security with a car full of students. I'm the kid in our group of friends who never drinks, never has. I was driving all of these crazies home, and I was pulled over and told that campus was only for students, and asked what I was doing, right? Like, I have a white wife, and she's amazing. I moved to LA for her. Thank God it worked out. And she's been in a car with me, where again, I've been driving some colleagues home, including her, who had a few drinks, and the cop stops us and goes over to her side of the car and asks if she's okay, if she wants to be in the car. Why isn't she driving if it's her car? And so there's this belief that because we're in California, everything's okay, or at least we're surrounded by folks who get it. And I would argue that we're really not. What I appreciated about the Midwest is I knew exactly who people were. Every neighbor that my parents have in their really fancy house that only cost them a couple $100,000 because they live in Nebraska has a Pence flag, a Trump Pence flag, Make America Great Again, in the front yard. But at least there, I know who they are. The scary thing is, here, I don't know. And I often got asked, why did you do a bike job after law school? Why are you doing a job where you're building parks and gardens? Those questions mainly come from my mom, who wants to know what to tell her friends. And I remember my interview at the Bike Coalition, and I said to the board when they asked me if there were any questions that they didn't ask me that I want to make sure they know. And I said, look, I'm a queer, gender nonconforming, Black woman. Those are the lenses through which I see all my work. And if you hire me, this is going to be a social justice organization that does what's right and that does what's just. Because that's what I learned at the Levin Center. But if you don't hire me, don't feel bad. Just know who you are, and it'll be fine. And I went home to my wife. She said, how did it go? And I was like, ooh, your people aren't ready. And that happens a lot, right? People get seduced by your Stanford law degree, that you're a person of color, that they can add diversity to their organization in that like 90s clip art way, where like there's the person in the wheelchair, there's the ambiguously ethnic person, and like they just want you to be their good Black. They just want you to be their good person with a disability. They just want you to be their good Native. But they don't want you to challenge anything. They don't want you to do anything but be who they tell you to be. So as someone who's from a military family and respects the American flag, what I see when I think about football is that there are people who are good enough when they are Black and brown faces doing their job, but not when they have an opinion. And that doesn't change just because you're not in the NFL. That's what you face as an attorney every day, no matter if you are working on parks or bikes or employment. When you are a person who sticks out and looks different, is a little quirky, or however folks want to describe you, you're also tokenized. And you have this heavy weight where you keep showing up and you keep letting yourself be tokenized, because you know if you don't, who's gonna say those things? And especially for Black folks, especially in the Bay Area, where we are disappearing. There are so many tables where people have forgotten we even exist because they don't see us. And so what we all need to do is folks who care about the public interest, who care about social justice, who care about the public good, is figure out how we're gonna wake up and do something. That's all it takes. That's why I'm working on parks. That's why I worked on bikes. Because there are so many systems in our country that are built on racial injustice. There's a reason that there's a saying on the other side of the tracks, and that our highway system has been used to decimate communities of color. There's a reason land use policies and environmental policies have been used to ghettoize and segregate our low-income communities of color, to take land from our Native populations. And we can do a lot about that involves more than changing your Facebook status. That involves more than making your picture a rainbow during Gay Pride Month. That realizes that a conversation around sexual assault and violence has to also include people of color and gender nonconforming people and sex workers. There are so many things and so many doors that open because you have a Stanford law degree. There are so many people who trust you, who think that you must know things more than how to just pick the right lunch talk based on food. They want you to stand up and they want you to do something. And sometimes when you try to do that, that's when they push back. That's when they say, I didn't know you were that kind of person of color. I didn't know you were that kind of woman. Why are you trying to be an ally? And what we all have to remember is we all have a role to play. So for the white folks in the room, my ask of you is to figure out that being an ally is more than just a word. It's a verb. It's an action. You have to do something. And the moment was a long time ago. But if you're at the party now, we'll let you come. We love having people at our barbecues. And we're in the Bay Area, so we have vegan options. So what are you gonna actually do? How are you actually gonna use this degree? And how are you gonna learn that sometimes doing something means taking a step back and letting the folks who are most impacted lead the way? Because the other thing that happens when you have a Stanford Law degree is people give you access to make change. And sometimes rather than giving credit and resources and time to the people who have been in the communities grinding, you want to do it yourself. You want to save everybody. But you have to know, when is it my place to say something? When is it my place to lead? When is it my place to speak at this table because there aren't the right people here? And how am I going to position myself to make sure that I'm giving up my seat to someone else? For the people of color in the room, for the women in the room, and white women especially, do all those other things I just said, please. Get your sisters who voted for Trump, do something. But for all the folks of color in the room, you have to remember that there are going to be people telling you who you should be. There are going to be people who tell you what a great opportunity you have with your Stanford degree and all the change you can make. But the reality is, we're just out here trying to make it. And you don't have to fight every battle for everyone. The other reason I change jobs every 3 years is because I always talk about race. I always talk about issues impacting people who are often forgotten. And that wears you out. I just left my bike job because there was somebody running for city council who was exposed as a racist on the interwebs, and I was one of his favorite targets. I took a beating from this white dude every day just because I wanted to talk about race. And I was raised by strong black women who told me I have to speak up. But you have to remember that sometimes you just don't have it in you. And it's okay to protect yourself. It's okay to do what you have to do to make it through 3 years of law school. It's okay to do what you have to do to make it through life. And know that there are always people who will be there for you, who have been through this experience just like you, and are here to support you. You went to Stanford Law School, you're all gonna do great things, but know that you can't do great things if you can't get out of bed in the morning. And in this current climate, that is something that is so real. It's so hard to have people say, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, when you've been living as a black person your whole life, every day in this country, while people try to imprison you and beat you and enslave you. And remember that if you can't get free, which we're all trying to do, you can't make change for others. So please be kind to yourself. Please think about what you're gonna do to take action, but know that you don't have to be the person of color or the woman who does it all. And I think for all of us, really look at John and Terry Levin as examples. They are taking action. They are trying to make change, and it's working. And so as you go home and you think about all the food you ate tonight and all the free alcohol you had, because Stanford, like I said, they really doing things, just remember that we all have a part to play, and we all have a part to play in making this world more just and more accepting, and truly eradicating what I think is the core of so much of what's happening, which is white supremacy. And you can't be afraid to say it, you can't be afraid to name it, and you can't be afraid to fight it. And with that in mind, the very last thing I'll say is thank you to my wife, who works with me every day to dismantle her own white supremacy and my impatience with white people generally. She has been a huge support system, and at every nonprofit I've been at every legal job I've had, she's been our pro bono counsel. She's been my biggest cheerleader. She actually co-clerked with one of my classmates who tried to introduce us for the whole year. They co-clerked together. And we met afterwards from a Skadden fellow in my class who went to her class at UCLA. And I know it's not easy to be with me, ever. I know it's not easy to be with a Black woman who suffers from trauma, from sexual assault and physical assault. And again, just being Black in this country. But you have been patient, you have been loving, and there's no award or honor I give or speech I make that I don't do knowing that I couldn't be there without you. So thank you, Stanford, and thank you, John and Terry Levin.